All right, everyone. Today, I am so excited to introduce my guest, Amy Ziff. She is the founder of Made Safe, now called Made Works. So, Amy, I'd love to just start these conversations by asking if you can just tell us a little bit about your background and what compelled you to start Made Safe, now Made Works.
Sure. I have a master's in journalism, which has nothing to do with environmental health. And I worked as an entrepreneur after doing some media work, worked as an entrepreneur at a series of startups focused on travel originally. And then I moved out west from the East Coast and went from having my first kid to having three kids because I had twins. And when I brought my twins home from the hospital, they were allergic to all kinds of things that I had used on my first stuff the hospital sent me home with. And that was kind of my wake up call. And it changed my life because I couldn't figure out why they were breaking out, why they had these angry red rashes, they were vomiting. And I just was like, well, wait a minute. This didn't happen with my first. So what is going on? What could possibly be doing this? And I just had this mindset of like, this is fixable. So instead of going to the doctor for steroid creams and different kinds of solves, I just started researching and putting the pieces together and trying to figure out what was going on. And what I learned, you can't unlearn. I was exposed to the fact that my children were responding and reactive to things that I was using on them, to stuff that I had in my home, and to things that you don't see labels on as be careful, have caution. These have allergens at best, carcinogens at worst. And I just thought, I cannot possibly be the only parent on this planet who wants to know what's truly in their products and do better by their children. And also, I must not be the only person who has sensitive kids because obviously, compared to my first, my twins were more sensitive. But that is what I've learned, hugely common. And one of the very first places where you start to see allergic responses, allergies, autoimmune issues is the skin, our dermal layer. And so that was my foray into the things that we use on a daily basis matter enormously for our health. Sometimes the consequences are immediate, and other times they have long-term health consequences. I learned at that time that some of the things I was using on my children might increase their risk for cancer 20, 30 years down the road from that moment, that it might impact their fertility. I mean, literally, the capacity for my son's sperm to be virulent or my daughter's eggs to be viable based on what I was using at the time that they were infants. And that kind of blew my mind. And I thought more people need to know about this. The consequences are very serious, and we have a right to know. And our things should be labeled. And the government is not really interested in doing that work in a serious way. In the U.S., I also learned that we have scant legislation. The FDA controls those products that we're putting on our skin, using on our children and ourselves. And they barely regulate or are able to barely regulate anything in comparison to the European Union, which is at least monitoring a few thousand chemicals, has rules around far more than we do. I thought, this is crazy. This is just crazy. It is so simple. We need to understand if something that we're using is made with safe ingredients. And that was the genesis and the birth of what we now call the Made Safe certification. It took a lot of involvement with scientists and researchers and experts to devise the scientific map, if you will, on how we were going to grade and review ingredients. But having done all of that, that's kind of the long story in a nutshell of kind of how I got my start.
Yeah, I mean that's thank you for that. I mean we have a lot of parallels in our journeys in that sense, and I feel like a lot of people just don't know, and if they didn't have a sensitive child, how would they? So the work you're doing with Made Safe is just so important. So can you dive in? Can you just tell us what is Made Safe and why is it so important?
So, made safe literally means made with safe ingredients. And the way that we look at that and the approach to grading a single individual component that might go into a product is very rigorous. It's scientific, and it's also just not done anywhere else. So it separates Made Safe from every other program that's out there. We work under what's called an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, with all of our brands and their manufacturers so that we can see very deeply into what's going into a product and review all of those inputs, what's getting done to an ingredient, and all the sub-ingredients. So I like to give an example because lots of people say, oh, well, I just look at the label and then I decide if I want to use this product. I'm like, A, do you have a PhD in toxicology? Like, how are you deciding that? And B, labels lie. The best labels lie. And not because they are intentionally misleading, but because we don't have the same requirements that we do on other kinds of packaging, like food, for example, where if you're putting, let's say, a chocolate chip into something, you're going to see parenthetically what's in that chocolate chip. If you're using an ingredient like olive oil in a product, seems pretty simple. Olive oil is olive oil, right? Well, actually, to Made Safe, no. One olive oil isn't the same as the next. It depends on its chemical components. And what I mean by that is olive oil can be 100% olive oil, or it might be 70% olive oil, 20% soy oil, 3% colorant, 3% a mystery ingredient that isn't included, but just is missing, and 3% preservative. What each of those things are and getting to the bottom of the mysterious 3%, where to go, what is it, how do we calculate it? That is all very important. So Made Safe teases out all of those things, requires understanding of all of those things. There is no mystery 3% permitted. We work with manufacturers, suppliers of raw ingredients to get at that. And then we put each one of those individual components alone through what we call the ecosystem process. You can think of it as kind of a ingredient challenge. So we take that olive oil, and we're going to understand, first of all, olive oil has been used for the ages, and we truly know that it is a safe ingredient to use. But let's say it was something that we didn't know what it was. Then we're going to run through and ask, how does it behave in the human body? Does it bioaccumulate? Is the body able to process it? And is there any known toxicity issues? We have ways of, if we don't have an answer for that, we use a scientific modeling software in order to look at how is it going to behave in the human body. It ends up giving us a numeric output, and that is, either above or below the line of acceptability for bioaccumulation. So we do that for every single ingredient. For human health, that's where we start, but we don't stop there. Unlike others that say, well, if it's fine for humans, it's fine for everybody. We say, no, actually, we live as only one important entity in an ecosystem, and we have to investigate how that single ingredient is going to behave in air, in water, in soil, in sediment, in the aquatic environment, and to terrestrial life, the other sort of flora and fauna and animals that we share this planet with. So we're really trying to capture a 360-degree review of how a single input is going to behave in the wider world. And every single input in a Made Safe certified product has to pass that test. It has to go through, get those numeric ratings, and be able to pass. And if it doesn't, it's not a Made Safe certifiable ingredient. We work then with companies and their manufacturers to swap that out for something else that's better. And we keep going. And the thing that makes that so incredibly hard is that we don't necessarily know going in unless we've seen an ingredient before. We can't tell a brand, you're good to go. We know this is going to pass. We don't. We don't know what's hiding in there. We don't know. Maybe it's not going to be gentle enough on the aquatic environment. And that's a problem from where we sit. These products ultimately go down the drain, end up in the water table. And so we think at Made Safe, if you're going to use that moniker, you have to live up to it. And it is holding products and ingredients to the very highest level of integrity.
Yes. Well, I know this from two sides. As you know, I have the Free Living Co. marketplace and I carry non-toxic products. And Made Safe was one of the certifications that I look for in vetting products for the marketplace. And
Yay.
if they will allow me to carry them, I will carry any Made Safe certified product. So I came at your certification from that angle. And then, as you know, we've been working very closely on producing my line. And so I have actually been through your vetting process and not personally, right? So I'm the brand. I work with the formulator and the manufacturer. They have the raw ingredient supplier. So there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen here. And I'm just kind of saying this to educate the audience that it's not just like the brand founder sending Amy, a couple things and she's saying, oh yeah, that looks great. Like it's very thorough and process. And I know that we had to scrap a lot of ingredients. I know that we had to switch suppliers. Not all ingredients are made the same, as you talked about. We even had an ingredient that came from the same supplier, but we had to procure the European version of that ingredient because the US version didn't pass. So, I mean, when you say thorough, I mean, I'm just trying to illuminate the fact that this is incredibly thorough. And I was just hoping you could dive in a little deeper on, you talk about the ecosystem-wide approach. And again, sitting on the Free Living Co side of the fence here, I do have other certifications I look at, but none of them have this ecosystem-focused approach. Can you just talk about why that is so important and that why human health isn't the only thing we should be concerned about?
Yeah, so I mean, it's to some degree, it was a philosophical departure when I started Made Safe in looking at where products were falling down for me and my family. And what I saw was, oh, you can have a product that is quote unquote environmentally sound, but terrible for your health. I'll give you another example because I like examples. It's like makes it tangible, right? It's a product made from recycled plastic. And you and I have had this conversation. And, something made from recycled plastic on if you don't know much about this, on the surface seems like great. Who doesn't want something recycled? It's being reused. That must be better for the environment. Well, recycled plastics actually carry more harmful ingredients into products because we A, don't know what they are, but B, know that plastics actually absorb things into them so they can carry more heavy metals into products and different kinds of things like that, introducing them where they wouldn't have been in a virgin plastic. And so on the surface, that recycled plastic seems like a good thing, but then, and it checks the environmental box, but it's not actually better for your health. So that it was things like that that started me saying, you can get a green product, but that isn't enough. This must be an and not an or, and it must also be thought of in terms of the natural cycle, like nature just doesn't waste. And what I also was looking at was, the case for bioidentical, and how things, when I started this, the fight against GMOs was really raging. I was living in California. It was really, really happening on those front lines. And there was legislation trying to stop GMOs in California, and it failed. But what I realized was some things will be labeled as identical to natural, but they aren't. And we don't necessarily know yet because we don't have the longitudinal studies to know how they're going to impact us. So when we step back and take this kind of larger ecosystem approach, it allows our scientific process, the scientific method, if you will, to ask these questions and come down on a more considered side than, and maybe stricter, if you will, side of things than if we didn't. So the ecosystem approach really takes all of that into account. It thinks humans aren't the only ones, that we need to consider. We rely on water to drink and live. We rely on pollinators to do important work to have food on our tables. We are connected at every level to all of these other things, and we have to bring them into the consideration of making products and releasing them into the marketplace before just, going crazy. Letting things go into the marketplace and saying, oh, whoops, we should have considered that. I mean, plastics are a problem like that. If we had considered these things, we would never have allowed to become so prolific. Same things with PFAS chemicals. When you put these things, the chemicals like those through the ecosystem process, they fail and they would not be permitted. And they aren't permitted in Made Safe products. We have a banned list of more than 15,000 ingredients and substances because that's just the starting point.
Mm.
We know those should not be in there. Now, what else? And that's just radical. It is, people are like, wait, what? I'm like, no, what we're doing at Made Safe is revolutionary. It flips the normal conventional process on its head. Most people just say, oh, this ingredient's out there. It's allowed. Let's use it. It is all based on performance and shelf life and stability, all of which may be important, absolutely, for a product, but making them paramount and putting them above the well-being of humans and the planet that we require for survival, that to me just was, a problem. So that was what
Yeah.
the ecosystem was designed to
Well,
work.
I mean, I have the good fortune of getting to talk to a lot of consumers, both through the development process of designing the teen skincare line, but then also we have a retail shop. And when I tell people the level of detail that Made Safe goes into, you can almost see the look on their face, like they feel a sigh of relief, especially the younger generation. When I say what Made Safe means is like when this cleanser goes down the drain, it's not going to cause any harm to the ecosystem. I mean, they kind of light up. So I do think what you do is revolutionary, and the more we can have products go through your vetting process, I think the more comfortable the consumers are going to feel, and ultimately the healthier, humans and the planet will be. So
Absolutely.
on that
We need
note,
more people like you.
well, gosh, I mean, at this point, it's like it's a no-brainer. Like, why would I not do this? I mean, it just to me, it's so important. And I think what people don't see as consumers is, as a brand, you are working with a formulator. The formulator is working with raw ingredient suppliers. Like, there's a lot of room for error, and there's a lot of room for blinding things. I've heard many beauty founders say that ingredients get swapped out without them even
Yeah.
knowing. And
Right.
and so to have that layer of certification and scrutiny, to me, is like not optional.
Yeah.
So
Well,
anyway.
and that's one of the things we do is we help small and mid-sized players in particular who don't have the political sway that large players sometimes have, um, to demand and ensure that their products are exactly what they think they are, that they're getting that. And that's so, so important. And having founders like you, Dana, that really put that as a, we will not do it without this. We will not continue forward without that is really helpful because then we can help you meet your mission and make sure your products are living up to what your design is, what you've said is your parameters, but do it as an independent third party. And then, it's just a really good positive feedback loop. We feel like we help, and I've seen this time and time again, is one of our brands working with us to get a product through has to make a swap on an ingredient because it turns out it wasn't up to snuff. And then that manufacturer says, oh, wait, explain this to me so I can take it back to our internal team why this isn't acceptable. They may not like it, they may not agree with it, but it's information, it's science that they can use to take and show their internal team, and it helps build and create bigger awareness across the whole initiative of product manufacturing, and that's how we start to create inroads, and then more people are asking for that better ingredient, and then that cost comes down, and on and on and on. So it's really important, and the consumer saying we want this better product, it's worth it to have the made safe certification. That all feeds the loop too, and is really important.
Absolutely. Well, and I can say both the end result of our products that we worked with you on, but also all the products I carry in the marketplace. I mean, these are amazing products. They're actually some of my favorite products take the Made Safe certification off of it. So these brands, these manufacturers are finding those ingredients that are actually safe, and they're still getting that same user experience of the more toxic ingredients. So it's possible, and it's just it takes a little more effort, but of course.
Right.
Um, so on that note, I know you just rolled out MadeWise, hence
Yes.
you kind of folded MadeSafe and MadeWise under the MadeWorks brand. Can you tell us what that is, and then also just kind of why you felt it was important to have a second program?
Yeah. So we've been doing this for over 10 years now at Made Safe, in the marketplace, certifying products. And it is truly um, inspiring and so amazing to see products do and products meet the Made Safe mandate. But when I asked myself what's in store for the next 10 years, how do we keep going and growing? I asked kind of the team, our board, this challenge of how do we deepen our impact? And what kept coming back was we have to be able to work with more companies and to get them in the process, get them committed. And when we work with a company, they learn so deeply what you're talking about, about, wow, I didn't realize this or that or the other thing. There's all these opportunities. But it's hard to see that if you're just, looking across the shining sea going, wow, that seems like really hard and I'm probably never going to get there. How do you inspire brands to do that? So we looked at what we were doing. We took our banned list, which, as I said, we start with this list of banned ingredients that's over 15,000 large. And when you look at what ingredients or substances are doing the most harm in the world, it is truly those ingredients. And we thought, what if we broke this into two pieces and allowed people to take that first step, got them invested in making that first step, and then we can put them on a path to get to made safe. So if we break those things out, maybe it becomes a little bit more digestible for brands that just are looking across the sea going like, well, that's Mecca, but I'm never going to get there, and makes it, makes it possible. So the intent was really have impact on some of the most important or most polluting ingredients of our time. I call these the irrefutables. There's so much science on them. We know they shouldn't be in products, and yet they're in all kinds of products. And, very frustratingly, infuriatingly, whatever you want to say, in products that we're using not just on ourselves, but our kids from
Mhm.
infants up through teens. And those are the um, people who are most susceptible to endocrine disruption and all kinds of product pollution that can have outsized impact on their lives. So, if we could get those ingredients out of our air, water, and soil, we'd be doing amazing things. So let's get them out of our homes. Let's draw down that pollution very intentionally, and let's get these products all in the queue to become ultimately made safe.
Mhm.
So that was kind of the thinking, and it was working a little backwards. And the reason why it's so important is that Made Safe will never compromise. We've already lived that. We know it. It is worth it. The brands that are in Made Safe, they're truly light years ahead of every other product that's out there. They are doing a very different kind of production, but the kind of production that we need to foster a future where all people and beings and things can thrive. And we don't want to see that go away, but we do want to see the pipeline for that build. So, MadeWise, it's a different claim. It is only about adhering to that ban list, but it helps us start to be able to measurably draw down on those worst chemical pollutants of our time and give something really substantive to people. Also, we didn't decide to do that for exactly the products that we're already certifying at Made Safe. We thought, let's do these in the areas where we're not touching. We tend not to do color cosmetics because they can't really pass Made Safe. Um, they'd be good in Made Wise. You
Mhm.
know, it's things like that that we thought there's an opportunity. We can't do supplements in Made Safe, not because we don't want to actually, but because of FDA rules. Can't use the term safe.
Mhm.
So we can put that, supplements into that category and give them a way to distinguish themselves when they are doing additional looks and testing on just kind of purity from those harms. So, we were thoughtful about like where do we want to introduce this and how to be different.
No, I think it's great. And, I feel really fortunate that I engaged Made Safe at the very beginning of the journey of product development, or fairly close to the very beginning. But brands that have been established and already have formulas, it's very costly to go back to the drawing board. So I think the Made Wise, like you said, it's a great place for those brands. And then as they're iterating new products or reformulating their old versions, obviously they can strive for the Made Safe. So I think it's great. Obviously, we know Made Safe is the creme de la creme. Can you just talk about other certifications? If your daughters are going to Sephora with their friends, or if you're at the grocery store looking for household products, are there other certifications that you feel a consumer can look at and feel like, okay, I mean, it may not be perfect, but at least it's better than nothing? Tough question, huh?
I would say there's nothing in Sephora that I want my kids to come home with, and that is sad. I think Target has done a interesting job at trying to do better, but it's all over the place. You have to really know what you're looking for, and there's nothing in color cosmetics that's meeting our mandate. And that's a real crime because our kids are using these products and they're being marketed to, and things need to be better. Um, Look, I think any certification is better than none.
Hmm.
So let me start there. But what I wish was that consumers understood the differences between them, and that many of the certification programs I'm aware of out there are pay to play, which means you can pay to receive a seal. It really doesn't matter how good you are. And that's problematic. Or maybe they have a small red list. Ours is 15,000 large. It does classes, so you're not getting plasticizing ingredients or PFAS ingredients or high risk pesticides, harmful preservatives that are endocrine disrupting, and on and on. And we draw a really hard line about those things. And most other certifications have decided that they want to be a bit easier. For example, the government certifications like Safer Choice, where we, I suppose, compete, although I think of us as just completely different concepts. They're about doing better. So what the Safer Choice created was a program that everybody could participate in. So if you have a household cleaner, you can participate in their program. And what happens is it's really hard for the consumer to understand which part of the program you're in. Are you in a good part, or are you in the least you have to ever do to be in there? And what does it mean? And they have a complex system of signs of red, green, yellow kind of signals. Some are octagonal, some are circular, others are triangles. And depending on the color and the combination of that depends on your rating. If you ask 10 customers what that meant, I don't think a single one of them would understand those nuances or that it applied to a product they were buying. That does everybody a disservice because that lack of clarity means that seal is really meaningless, or meaningful wrongfully.
Yeah.
That people are assigning something better to it that it doesn't deserve. So I find, that convention frustrating and wish it was just a little bit more clear for people to be able to have an understanding about exactly what that brand is doing to adhere to their preservatives rule or their surfactants rule or what. I'm not saying that most consumers know when they come to Made Safe about what we do and don't allow, but our claim is very clear. And if they read our standard, it's also very clear about all of the different things, all of the different measurements we're looking at. And
Yeah.
we're the first ones to say not every brand should work with us. We are extremely prohibitive. And that was a choice we made. And that is so that it continues to be a differentiator and also something that says, look what's possible. When
Mm.
you see the Made Safe certification on a product, you know that is a next generation product. And we want that to be something that everybody else says, wow, all right, we've got to up our game. We have to do better. So I make it less about the other seals and really more about that. Like, how do we do that? But if you're a person trying to figure out what to buy, I guess my answer to that question is understand the companies you're buying from. Get to know a little bit about who they are, who's making those decisions. Because in that, not everybody will be perfect. Not every product will be perfect. That's okay. What is important is that they're doing the work to know, to try, and to share that with you, the consumer. Anyone who's hiding, that to me is a problem. And those are the things you want to look for. Are they saying if they have fragrance, why they're using it, what it's made out of, and that they are, sharing that entire information with their consumer. Those are little tells about brands that understand ingredients, ingredient integrity, and what people want. I'm not saying, their fragrance will be perfect, but they're sharing that so for people who care, they can get that information.
Yeah, no, totally. Totally agree. We actually list all of our ingredients on our website. So, brands choose not to do that. They feel like it's proprietary, but I feel like at this point in time, someone could reverse engineer your product pretty easily. Sharing and disclosing, being transparent is really important. And I think especially in the space that I'm working in with teens, I feel like now's the time we can really educate them and make sure they're aware of who they're buying from. And
Yep.
I do want to kind of shift to that next because I know you have your twins are teens, and
Yep. All three of my kids are
all
teens.
three of your kids are teens. So why, I mean, I know you talked about your twins and their sensitivities and their babies. Why in the teen years is it so important to be especially concerned about ingredient safety?
So, when your body is growing and developing, those are times where there are kind of windows of opportunity, if you will, for these chemicals to have an outside impact, and those are happening throughout your adolescence. That's one. And two, what I watch is with the hormonal shifts that are happening. I have two girls and a boy. With those hormonal shifts, their skin's changing. How they need to take care of their skin is changing. And learning young that what you put on your body goes in your body and impacts your body is a really good thing to learn. And I think today's teens are more aware about that and want better products. They want products that aren't going to harm the planet that they're living on and going into the future, needing to protect. And so they want their products to not just be performing for them, if you will, but they want them to do no harm.
Hmm.
And I don't know how anyone can know that unless it has the Made Safe certification on it. So I think that's really important as well. And I will just say the thing is that teens they don't need anti-aging. They don't need certain kinds of performance ingredients that are all over the internet, that are just gimmicks. And who knows if they even work in terms of, what they're saying for people who are looking to defy wrinkling and all of those things. But caring for their skin can be the best way that they can, you know, protect their skin from as they age, and developing good habits, but not overdoing it. And I think that's important. And I'm sure as a, you know, brand, those are things brands have to wrestle with. They want to sell more product. That's what, makes them money. But I think a teen brand is so important to be kind of straight with their clients about like, this is what you need, this is what you don't need. And, you know, here you go. I'll
Yeah.
be the straight man, so to
Yeah.
speak. And
Yeah.
I think you've done a good job at really saying to yourself, like, what's a must-have in this line? What are we
Mhm.
going to do to answer that? And then what aren't we going to do?
Yeah, no, for sure. And it's interesting too, in talking to the teens, as you alluded to, many of them have no clue. I mean, they'll bring forward 10 or 12 products. This is my 10-step nightly routine, and they have no idea what these products are doing. But if you ask them, what are you trying to accomplish with your skin? It comes down to blemish control, hydration, and then just building a good solid skin barrier. And it really is that simple. So that was really what we tried to target with our products. And I think, I think we did a good job of it. So we'll let your
That's
girls be the judge.
yay. They're excited. They're very
So
excited.
so if you're not, if you're not a child of Amy Ziff or even Dana Gurnell, how do you educate your kids? I mean, there is the whole Sephora Kids craze. There is TikTok. There are all these influences on our kids. As a parent, how do you start to try to educate your kids on, why this is important and how to protect themselves?
Um, I mean, okay. The answer to this question is really because I am Amy Ziff, the reason why I would say where to start, and throw in what you think. But I think it's important, just like you might be thinking about what you're feeding your kids, what are they using on their bodies that will ultimately go in their bodies? Think about that ingredient integrity, and does it have a purpose and a point? And if not, it's probably superfluous. I tell people all the time, save your money, buy better products and buy fewer. And that absolutely is the perfect way in and to start. You don't have to be an ingredient expert on absolutely everything, but in order to, protect your skin and do right by it, like you will also do right by the planet by using fewer better things and having them be high integrity. So a way to look for that is a third party seal, hopefully made safe, made wise, something else if you can't find those. Organic is actually a great one. But understanding what those do, those certifications are going to mean products are using real ingredients. And when I say real ingredients, I mean fewer chemicals, fewer synthetics, and more things that came from the earth, from grown in a garden and, pressed, etc. And the reason why that's important is because we know and we have grown and, let's say, evolved as humans over time with those ingredients. And so we tend to know which ones are going to, work for certain purposes and not for others. And sometimes that's more costly. Chemicals can be really, really cheap. So chemicals frequently cut products. So if you're looking to avoid those, avoid fragrance, avoid, this isn't an absolute, but a good place to start. Avoid ingredients that have alphanumeric names are really long. That's usually a signal of something highly chemical. Uh, Look for things that are fewer ingredients that also isn't perfect but can be a guide to help starting, and have conversations around what are these things and why do you want that thing from, Sephora or wherever you're shopping? Why do you want that? And I think that's the best thing we can do with our kids is unpack some of that so they can start to be clear about where the marketing is coming from. Because boy, that marketing is so, pervasive and it's so strong. You're like, wait, why do I don't know. I want that thing because I've been hearing about it. It's like just, jingling around in my head like loose change, trying, and it turns out you're seeing those ads on your social feed and they're putting these thoughts in your head
Yeah.
that maybe you don't really need it.
I mean, your comment on the marketing, that is what got me down this path working with you and formulating my own product is I mean, I couldn't believe the clean claims that the teen brands were making and looking at the ingredients and finding many of the ingredients on your 15,000 banned, even the European, that is much fewer ingredients that they regulate. I just couldn't believe it. I'm like, they're calling this clean and these teenagers are believing it. And yet, this is probably causing part of their problems. They're trying to use the products to solve their problem, and the products are probably causing the problems. So I think it's
Yeah,
the advice of just keep it simple, look for fewer ingredients, know who you're buying from. I think those are all great. And it'll set the teenagers up to make really good decisions as they're out of your home and onto their lives.
exactly.
So. Love it. Okay, so if you're willing, I always like to ask my guests, I try to kind of humanize people like you who clearly are just so knowledgeable and really paving the way, leading the way on just being responsible with, how we produce products. I'd like to ask if you have any dirty secrets, and you don't have to answer, but if there is one you're willing to share to kind of make you feel like you are human too,
Mm.
share it with us.
Oh my God. I mean, I'm completely human and I'm always trying to get rid of things that don't belong in my house. And my kids know to like if they've had water from a plastic water bottle to like ditch that before they get home because I will be like, why did you bring that into the house? Why did you drink from that? Why did you whatever? And so these things happen and my kids like are mildly terrified of it. But so we're a real family. We try our best and make it sometimes and don't the others. I'm trying to think of a good one that's happened recently. Um, I mean, my big thing was I used to like chew gum all the time. And I don't remember exactly when I realized that gum base had moved from being chicle. Like I literally grew up having chiclets, which were made with chicle, which is you tap a tree, you get the substance, and it was the
Yeah,
chewing base. And somewhere along the way, like I started chewing Hubba Bubba and Bubble Yum and different kinds of gums that you could blow incredible bubbles with, and they're plastic. It's plastic base. And even today, like Trident or Orbit or whatever the common gums are, they're all plastic chewing gum base. Even better ones are plastic chewing gum base. And that was just like a real heartbreak for me. And then I went on a, rampage to try and find something better. And Trader Joe's has a natural gum that is like passable. You cannot blow a bubble with it, but you can like chew gum on an
yeah,
airplane.
yeah,
And it'll be okay. And their refreshment is another one. And there are a couple that I've found that are substitutes. And so like I'm human. I
yeah,
chewed loads and loads of gum. I have so much plastic bits floating around my system that are hopefully, passing out. But like it happens. There's still plastic in my fridge. I wish there was zero. I'm probably more fanatical than the next person, but we all live in the same world. And the problem is the products come unless we are really devoted to buying differently. And like I am, and I do that because I want everybody else to have access to better and more options. And the only way to get there is to reward those companies that are packaging in glass, that are thinking a little bit differently, that are using principles of ingredient integrity, and going forward like that. So even if that means that product is slightly more expensive, I am there and I'm going to do that and I'm going to forego the dryer sheets because I don't need them. You know
yeah.
what? And I can save that money and apply it to buying a better laundry detergent. And so
Yeah.
that's kind of the rules that I live by.
Totally. I mean, and that, like you said, like you vote with your dollars, right? Every time you purchase something, you are telling the big companies, what you want more of. So
Yeah.
I think it is a really great way to consume products is thinking that through and that it is almost a responsibility. So any other advice before we wrap up on just consumers who are trying to navigate this all, whether it's a parent or a teen or just anyone, how do they, where do they begin and how do they navigate all this?
Okay, so I write a Substack and I talk all the time over there. It's called Clean Living in a Dirty Age. And I give ideas on ways in. It's all about like, how do I start? Where do I start? And a few things that I say. One is don't overthink this. You can do it. Start with the next thing you're about to purchase and
Mhm.
make a better purchase on that. So if the next thing you're going to buy is a sponge for your house, I got to tell you, most sponges are made from plastic. They are made from petroleum-derived sources. They're not natural. It's really easy to switch to a natural sponge, which you can throw in a compost. And when it's done, it will go back to the earth. Like, yay, then, problem solved on that. But maybe the next thing you need is, face cream. Okay, well, that's easy. Go to Made Safe and look at some options. And we have options at a lot of different price points for people. And again, say, okay, I can do that. Experiment, try, test new brands, and really ask yourself when you're going to buy that next thing, do I actually really need this? Is this a product I need to bring not just into my home, but like, do I really need to support this product being made and manufactured? Because all of that has cost to our, ecosystem in our world. So just applying that thought is a great place to begin, and doing little things like if you want to have, fewer toxins, less pollution in your home, thinking about open the windows every day. It costs zero. And it actually helps move VOCs, out of the house. Because people are so surprised to learn that the products that they're using, especially those personal care products, are actually causing a large amount of indoor air pollution. They just have no idea. So usher out that air, usher in new air, costs nothing, and take your shoes off at the door. Those are two free things you can do to just limit pollution in your home and start changing the way you think. And then whatever you need to buy next.
I love it. I think it's great. Well, and when you do, if there are products you do need to purchase, I find just from, again, speaking to people who are starting to convert to cleaner products, they start to almost feel a repulsion against the chemical laden products. Your body starts to acclimate and starts to like, and so I think that's also a good thing too. When you walk through a grocery store and you kind of feel repelled by the cleaning aisle, that's good. I mean, your body is
And you're like, I
detoxifying.
don't want to go through this aisle.
Exactly, exactly. Okay, well, so tell us, you talked about your Substack. Go find Amy on Substack, Clean Living in a Dirty Age. Where else can they find you?
Follow us. Well, you can follow me, Amy hyphen Ziff at Instagram, and then Made Safe HQ on Instagram as well. We're also on TikTok and Facebook, so you can find us there as well. And subscribe to our newsletter, madesafe.org, and just start to, be open to thinking about the places where you feel like I could do that. I could do that. That's a good place to begin.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to educate us on Made Safe and ingredients and where to begin and dealing with your teenagers and how to help them navigate all this. Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure speaking with you and really appreciate your time.
Thanks, Dana.